What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building. So I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we begin with breaking news out of Los Angeles, where journalist Don Lemon has been arrested and is expected in federal court today. The DOJ claims that the journalist was part of a protest that disrupted a church service in St. Paul, Minnesota earlier this month, after reports that the pastor was an immigration and customs enforcement official. But Lemon says he was covering the protest as a reporter. So let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Lilia Luciano to tell us more about this. So Lilia, what have you learned subsequent to Don's arrest?
Well, Vlad, I was shocked this morning when I got a tip from somebody who is familiar with the arrest saying, big news, and that Don Lemon was in custody. Of course, I hadn't covered the protests. I got here this week, but I remember what had happened in that church back, I believe it was January 18th, where people had shown up to protest a pastor who worked with ICE. Don Lemon was there. We don't have, of course, the evidence, what was presented to this grand jury. But he was charged under the FACE Act, which is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which basically he's being accused. And initially, the government wanted to charge 5 people in total, including him, for basically obstructing people's freedom of speech, ironically.
I'm not trying to laugh or be funny, but you got to love the irony in this situation. For years, Don Lemon, he was the one sitting behind the desk, delivering the moral lectures, assigning himself the task of determining who's right, who's wrong, who's obeying the law, and who's breaking the law. Now it's like the roles have been totally flipped, and Don finds himself on the other side of the law. But most importantly, he's on the other side of the seat of judgment. There's one thing I'm really noticing is how the mainstream media is, if not totally silent about what's going on with Don Lemon, they are definitely doing every single thing they can to spin and warp the narrative. Now, let's be real. Don Lemon was totally rejected by the mainstream media, right? Fired from CNN. No other company wanted to hire him. So he tried to go off on his own and do his own thing. He's been trying to, since he was fired from CNN, he's been trying to rebrand himself as this ultimate unbiased truth teller and truth seeker. But in reality, Don Lemon is so biased, he can't hide it. He's just a typical liberal Democrat shill who will say any and everything to make everything the left does seem like it's the right thing to do. And what's worse is Don Lemon not only has these shill tendencies, he will try to debate you, bully you, and talk you down if you don't agree with him. And that is what makes what he did at the church in Minnesota so bad, because he claims he was just there as a journalist, but Don Lemon was there arguing people down, lecturing people about what the First Amendment entails, lecturing people about due process, lecturing people about what Jesus would have done, and basically finger wagging and talking down to the people who are members of the church that he and those other anti-ICE insurgents invaded. The worst part is the pastor himself asked Don Lemon to leave. And he's saying, I'm just there taking pictures. I'm just there reporting the news. No, Don, you're trespassing. And when you were repeatedly asked to leave because you were interrupting a worship service, you continued to lecture people and try to debate people, try to bait people into debates about the validity or legitimacy of what you and the other anti-ICE protesters were doing. And now we're finding footage, or we're finding proof that Don Lemon knew that they were going to invade that church. He's saying, his whole claim is like, oh, I didn't know what they were going to do. I was just following them so I could report the news. But in fact, Don Lemon did know. And part of me believes that that is the entire reason why Don Lemon went down there.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is our senior judicial analyst. Good morning to you with this breaking news.
It's a strange case. 5 different judges reviewed the evidence against Don Lemon. A magistrate judge who said no, a district court judge who happens to be the chief judge of the district who said no, and 3 appellate judges in the 8th Circuit said no. It is almost unheard of for the DOJ to appeal a denial of the issue of an arrest warrant. They went to the magistrate judge. Here's our evidence against the people that raided the church. We want to arrest all of them. The magistrate judge said there's evidence against this one. There's enough against this one, enough against that one. There's no evidence against Don Lemon. The district judge said no evidence against Don Lemon. The 3 appellate court judges refused to get involved, so they effectively agreed with what the lower judges had decided. So how did they arrest him?
Okay, so you're going to see a lot of this type of rhetoric in the mainstream media. Let's make something clear. It's almost unheard of that a person who's running for president of the United States is put on trial in the middle of their presidential campaign. The person who is leading in the polls, the leading candidate, is put on trial while they are running their presidential campaign. It's almost unheard of for the employees, the campaign manager, etc., of a president or a former president to be put on trial and arrested and sent to prison. We are in a different time politically. We now have activist judges who are willing to break the law in an attempt to further a certain political agenda. Understand that. You've had federal judges arrested for helping illegal immigrants creep out the back door after court proceedings to assist them in escaping from ICE and Border Patrol agents. You have judges who go against the law and go against the Constitution, break with precedent, all in the interest of furthering a particular political narrative. So when you look at the situation with Don Lemon and you say, oh, these 5 lower court judges did this and did that, well, now we're at a point where we have to ask, what is the political affiliation of these judges? You have judges blocking immigration agents from doing their constitutionally supported job because of their personal feelings regarding illegal immigration. This is where we are. You have people screaming that we need to pack the Supreme Court. You have politicians allowing illegal immigrants to invade America so that they can bolster their voting base. Please stop with the shock and awe. Oh, well, the 5 judges said that. Well, you know that these judges are most likely activist judges who are far left liberal supporters or thinkers. That's the way it is. Because even with my knowledge of the Constitution, I understand that Don Lemon broke the law. Start this over.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is our senior judicial analyst. Good morning to you with this breaking news.
It's a strange case. 5 different judges reviewed the evidence against Don Lemon. A magistrate judge who said no, a district court judge who happens to be the chief judge of that district who said no, and 3 appellate judges in the 8th Circuit said no. It is almost unheard of for the DOJ to appeal a denial of the issue of an arrest warrant. They went to the magistrate judge. Here's our evidence against the people that raided the church. We want to arrest all of them. The magistrate judge said there's evidence against this one. There's enough against this one, enough against that one. There's no evidence against Don Lemon. The district judge said no evidence against Don Lemon.
All right, so this guy is a dishonest person. So Don Lemon is with these activists. Now we're finding out he knows what they were going to do. He knew what they were going to do. He goes into court, and the question is, was he operating as a journalist or as a protester, right? At the bare minimum, a warrant should be signed so that we can bring him to trial and determine whether he was truly there as a journalist or as a protester, right? So you're saying this is all suspicion because these are all allegations because you're innocent until you're proven guilty. So you're saying you had enough evidence to bring charges against everyone else except Don Lemon, even though he was there, right? Of course, they're going to appeal this because it reeks of being the decisions made by it reeks of decisions being made by activist judges who are determining whether or not they have enough evidence to indict Don Lemon based on their own personal preference or political leanings.
The 3 appellate court judges refused to get involved, so they effectively agreed with what the lower judges had decided. So how did they arrest him? The only other way they could have arrested him legally.
They refused to get involved, so that means they agreed with the other judges. That's silly, man. I don't know why people who are supposed to have integrity get on these shows and lie. Just because I say I'm not in it, that doesn't mean I agree with either side. That's the point. I'm not getting involved. That's not an agreement. That's just saying we're not going to rule on this. We want another court to decide. We don't have enough we don't really know, we don't have enough evidence to really make a determination or not. Well, when in doubt, indict and let the system let the trial play out.
Is to have gone to a grand jury and presented the same evidence that these 5 judges said didn't exist and persuaded a majority of the grand jury to indict him. If he was not indicted by a grand jury, then this was not an arrest, it was a kidnapping, because you have these 5 federal judges saying we're not signing off on an arrest warrant.
Yeah, but that's
Here you go. And right there, he revealed where his mind is. Oh, this was a kidnapping. When you start hearing people use that type of language, you know that they have the woke mind virus. You know they're most likely suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. By law enforcement has the right to arrest you and hold you for a certain amount of time with no charges. That's probably in every state in the union and definitely federally. Oh, it's a kidnapping. See, that's when this guy loses all credibility with me, because now he's trying to speak or send a dog whistle to a certain element within our political system. And he has this little silly smirk on his face. And that says a lot, because a lot of these dudes, they want to be famous now. They've been very successful in their career. Now they want to become famous and make it onto more of these talk shows.
far-fetched, right? It doesn't appear to be a kidnapping.
It's almost inconceivable to me, because they know the laws well or better than I do, that they would have to have some legal basis to arrest him other than their own wish to arrest him, and that must have come from a grand jury.
So let's take
and the host is even checking him. That's far-fetched.
At least secure some type of charge based on whichever evidence that we don't have to show just yet.
But we don't know what
the host stops him. Oh, that's far-fetched. Do you think he said, oh, maybe that's a little bit much? But no, they don't care. These people never apologize. They throw things out there to see if they can rage bait you or gaslight you. And then if it doesn't work, let's just keep going.
It is.
Where we don't know what it is exactly. But we do know that he is in federal custody.
Correct. He's in federal custody in Los Angeles because that's where they found him.
Yeah.
He's going to appear before a federal magistrate judge in Los Angeles. He'll be released on his own recognizance. Then he's got to appear before a federal district court judge in the district where the grand jury sat under the Constitution. That has to be the district in which the crime allegedly occurred, which
back to
means
Minnesota.
back to Minneapolis, where all this started.
Yeah. In terms of the charges, what they possibly are, it hasn't been announced yet, but there have been reports of what they are, which I read earlier. The FACE Act, a violation of the FACE Act, sticks out to me. If indeed that is one of the charges, what does that hold?
Well, that he's
if charged and convicted, right.
5 years in jail if convicted. He's probably being charged, if I could guess, with conspiracy to violate the FACE Act. They probably have some people with whom he participated in conversations about how to get into the church, because it does appear from the videos that he didn't do anything even remotely criminal.
Even when the pastor asked him to leave and he did not leave.
Well, the other journalist didn't leave either. I mean, he said,
does that make it right?
Well, they have a great question.
Well, he's stuttering. Great question. When someone says that, you got him. And that's what I like about News Nation. Because they'll actually do what CNN and MS or BS Now does. They follow up. You said this, now let me ask a question that puts you in the position where you have to actually defend what you just said. So the judge is saying that they'll say he had a conspiracy to violate the FACE Act. Real quick, let's go over to AI. What is the FACE Act? Simplified version of that. I want to make sure you guys can see that. Okay. And what is the FACE Act? The FACE Act is a 1994 U.S. federal law that prohibits the use of force, threats, or physical obstruction. That's the part that you need to pay attention to. Physical obstruction to intimidate or interfere with individuals seeking or providing reproductive health services. It also protects against the destruction of property at reproductive health facilities and places of religious worship. Okay, so understand something. Biden was sending people to prison for praying in front of the front door of abortion facilities, just standing there, not stopping people from going inside, but standing in front of the door praying. They're saying, oh, they're obstructing them from getting in, and also they use that, oh, they're intimidating them. Someone might be intimidated and therefore deterred from getting an abortion if they see some church members standing in front of the door praying, right? Okay, so a lot of it is left up to the interpretation or the perception of the victim, right? That's the same exact thing with what Don Lemon did. Don Lemon went into the church. He was arguing people down. He was debating and lecturing people. And when he was asked to leave, he did not leave. He ignored the request for him and the others to leave. If he's a true journalist, if someone says, can you please leave this property? He has to abide by that. Okay, I'm going to leave, right? He stayed there and finger whacked people and talked people down and debated and argued with people. He violated the FACE Act. And if someone feels like what he was doing was intimidating, he violated the FACE Act. On top of that, Don Lemon is a famous person. He's a public figure. There are people who will be intimidated by your presence just because of your fame and notoriety. So in my opinion, he did violate the FACE Act.
John, I can't answer it yes or no, but I can say.
Can't answer yes or no, Judge.
Supreme Court opinions that say bona fide journalists can stay at the scene of a crime if the acts are still ongoing, as long as their presence there is not interfering with law enforcement. Now, when the pastor said,
so bona fide journalists can stay at the scene of a crime. It wasn't the scene of a crime. It was if what Don Lemon and the Black Lives Matter activists say is true, then there was no crime. They were just there to worship. They said we sung with them, we clapped. It wasn't a crime, right? That's what they're saying. So then when they were asked to leave, they should go. If a bum walked into a church screaming and interrupting service and the pastor said, "Sir, could you please leave?" that homeless person would be trespassing and therefore would be committing a crime if they refuse to go. So the crime was you refused to leave when they requested that you go.
Said leave. Law enforcement hadn't even gotten there yet.
Hey, but if it was found that he, along with the organizers of this, to go inside of that church and again stop that service.
If he stopped the service, it's a federal crime.
Okay.
If he didn't leave when they said leave, that's simple trespassing. The feds don't even have the authority to prosecute.
Conspiracy.
Right there. That's it. It's over. If he stopped the service, that's a federal crime. Did you hear this guy just say that? If he stopped the service, that's a federal crime. That's what they did. They interrupted the service. Interrupt is the same thing as stop. They stopped the service, therefore they committed a federal crime. This guy right here, let him be the lawyer. Because he's such a buffoon that he just pretty much made the case of the DOJ. These people purposely get on Newsmax, News Nation. They get on these shows and they send like a dog whistle. Hey, CNN. Hey, MSNBC, if you need somebody to come up there, come on your show and lie on behalf of liberals and far left radicals, I'm your guy. When you went in to that church, Don Lemon, when you invaded that church with those anti-ICE protesters, you were infringing upon those people's freedom to practice their religious beliefs, free from threat of harm or intimidation. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were intimidating. They were attempting to intimidate these Christian people on behalf of the illegal criminal alien migrants that they are advocating for, not because they care about them being deported, but because it coincides with their overall political agenda.